Okay, I'd like to call the regular city commission meeting of September 17th, 2024 to order and ask all of you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call. Commissioner Elder.
Present.
Commissioner Steinert. Present. Commissioner Olsman.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Rozelle is excused, as is our city manager who's feeling under the weather tonight, and Mayor Paul present. We have one change to the agenda. We need to add item number 4, which is appointments to boards and commissions. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I don't believe we had any communications. No elected officials in the room. So we'll move to our proclamations. We have a couple of proclamations this evening that the Oakland County Health Network has asked us to make. One is naming September as National Recovery Month. According to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, in 2022, 17.3% of Americans, or 48.7 million people, 12 years or older, were classified as having a substance use disorder in the past year, including 29.5 million people who were classified as having an alcohol use disorder and 27.2 million people who were classified as having drug use disorders. So now, therefore, let it be resolved that the City of Huntington Woods recognizes September 2024 as National Recovery Month, and we call upon individuals, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, faith-based organizations, and schools to recommit our state to increasing awareness and understanding of substance abuse and the need for appropriate and accessible services to promote recovery. The second proclamation is naming September as National Suicide Prevention Month. September is known as National Suicide Prevention Month and is intended to help awareness surrounding suicide prevention resources available in the community. So now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Huntington Woods recognizes September 2024 as National Suicide Prevention Month. And we once again call on individuals, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, faith-based organizations, and schools to recommit our state to increasing awareness and understanding of suicide prevention and the need for appropriate and accessible services to assist individuals in crisis. Public participation. This is an opportunity for the public to address the City Commission for an item or an issue not on the agenda. Those wishing to address the Commission should step to the podium, state their name and address for the record. It would also be helpful to give your name and contact information to the City Clerk if you would like to receive follow-up correspondence. In general, members of the public get one opportunity to speak during this portion of the meeting. There's no coming back to the podium to make follow-up or additional comments. Generally, public comments are not a dialogue. This means neither the City Commission nor staff will engage in a question and answer session or back and forth discussion with the speaker. However, the mayor may ask the city manager or city staff to answer questions if possible, or to gather more information regarding the subject and continue the discussion with the concerned party outside of the meeting.
Jessica Downey, 13160 Kingston. At last month's City Commission meeting, I reiterated my ongoing concerns about the state of Vale Jones Park. I provided evidence of various violations such as litter, marijuana paraphernalia, alcohol, and weeds, highlighting the poor condition of the park. The pictures I shared clearly showcased the dire condition of the park, and I hoped you would share my outrage and take prompt action to improve its cleanliness. Of course, this did not happen. Your continued inaction has shown me just how little you care about Vale Jones Park and all of the residents and visitors affected by what transpires there. The half-full Arizona iced tea bottle, car part, Faygo bottle, papers, and miscellaneous trash and debris that has been sitting 40 feet from my property line since early June, still there. Alcohol bottles, still there, taken yesterday. Marijuana paraphernalia, still there. Dozens of cigarette butts in a supposed smoke-free park, still there. The broken, dilapidated, unsafe picnic table, still there. The multiple empty water bottles, pop bottles, Gatorade bottles, and empty cups, you guessed it, still there. The fallen limbs and branches, still there. The miscellaneous garbage spread all throughout the park, still there. And we have a new addition of an open, filthy container of used baby wipes that has been added and has been sitting there for 2 weeks now as well. In addition, an overflowing, leaking water fountain that's lacked maintenance for years and is just pouring water out constantly. I cannot understand why Vale Jones Park has such a stronghold over each of you. I cannot understand why you continue to allow every rule, ordinance, and violation that you're supposed to be upholding to be broken on a daily basis. I cannot understand why you have allowed it to become such a dilapidated eyesore. I cannot understand why you refuse to do anything to improve its condition, nor even admit the park is long past its useful life and could better serve our community if it was reimagined, which is what community input favors. Again, I'd like to remind you that on May 1st of this year, you posted a weed control notice for owners and occupants of parcels of land stating that any growth of grass or weeds greater than 6 inches needed to be removed or residents could be charged for removal by the city and receive civil fines. Again, I will remind you that you are spending over $100,000 a month for lawn care and maintenance throughout the city. In fact, since the last time I stood before you just 1 month ago, Vale Jones Park has been mowed 4 times. Those weeds that were over 50 inches last month are now teetering towards 65, over 10 times what your ordinance allows. You mean to tell me that $100,000 doesn't include weed removal? So again, we as citizens have to keep our properties in compliance with the ordinance, but the city does not have to keep theirs. And in case you're wondering, yes, the weeds are still there too. During the August meeting, I also expressed my concerns regarding the posting of the July 15th Special Commission meeting, citing a potential violation of the Open Meetings Act. In response, Mr. Wilson assured me that the city clerk would contact me and provide the information I was requesting. When I sought confirmation of that request after the meeting, I was met with a disrespectful and curt response. And despite Mr. Wilson rudely telling me he'd take care of it, he of course never did. In order to obtain the information he assured me I would get, I had to send a FOIA request on September 5th. The only thing I could confirm via that request was that the meeting was posted on the board in City Hall. Again, I will remind you and the public at large that this special meeting was not on the city calendar, was not shared in any e-blasts or newsletters, not in any email sent by the city, not posted anywhere on the city website, nor any other form of official digital communication. Again, I will remind you that notice must be posted in a prominent and conspicuous place at both the public body's principal office and on the official website of the public body on a portion of the site that's fully accessible to the public. Posting on the bulletin board at City Hall is not enough to satisfy the requirements of the Open Meetings Act that you are obligated to comply with. Again, moving forward, I would hope you would ensure better dissemination of information to the public in accordance with legal requirements for open meetings. And I'd like to remind Mr. Wilson that Section 2-102B of the Code of Ordinances for Huntington Woods states that all city officers and employees shall safeguard public confidence by being honest, fair, and respectful of all persons and property with whom they have contact. Lastly, despite my invitation to each of you to visit my property or the park, not a single one of you has. Where is your integrity and your obligation to the city of Huntington Woods and the residents you are elected to represent? It has been made perfectly clear to me that it doesn't matter how many meetings are attended, how much evidence is handed to you on a silver platter, how many emails are sent, calls are made, or research is done for your benefit and the benefit of all residents of Huntington Woods. You simply do not care. And I'll leave you with this quote. It is not only what we do, but also what we do not do for which we are accountable. Thank you.
That email I sent you included a link to the posting. It included a link.
Okay, that's all right.
It was to.
Thanks for your comments. Are there any other comments?
So it seems that your granddaughter had some positive influence on the quality of minutes that you
Tell her that
produced.
you approved.
Now, unfortunately, they're not up to total snuff, but there definitely was an improvement. But I do want to point out that reflecting on my comments as simply saying I commented on previous city commission minutes, when I said, in fact, that the minutes were totally inaccurate and I asked that they be corrected, is not accurate. As I pointed out earlier last time, the minutes that say noted his support of Gaza and Ukraine, I pointed to you again, makes no sense. And I asked that to be corrected as well. And as you know, from the Public Act, you simply just underline the one cross out the one you're correcting, and put the correct one in. So I'm asking again, will you simply correct the minutes so they accurately reflect what I say? And I think that's probably true for most of the people whose comments are captured here. I suspect that our previous speaker would not find the description of her comments very accurate as well. So I will leave information to contact me. If the city clerk needs any help translating this into English, I'm happy to help.
Any other comments? Okay, with that, public participation is closed, and we'll move on to the regular items of business. The first item is a matter of considering authorizing the city manager to approve the expenditure. There's actually a change here, not to exceed $50,000 for the purchase of new street signs for all the city streets through the Hunt Sign Company. The reason for the increase in price there is all the hardware that is necessary in order to mount those signs on the existing poles. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Comment?
Any public comment?
It seems irresponsible use of city resources to spend $50,000 on new street signs. I cannot imagine what the $50,000 worth of benefit is that, particularly when you could use that $50,000 on a park that needs work. Hard to understand your decision making.
Any other comments? Comments or questions from the commission?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm thrilled that we will finally have street signs that abide by the National Federal Highway Transportation Authority that are going to be visible at nighttime and reflective, so that our seniors in our community, our residents with visual impairment are going to be able to know where they're going, and I think it is a really wonderful use of our city funds.
I would echo Commissioner Steinhardt's comments and to also just state that for almost the entire time I've been on the city commission, the street signs have been a recurring topic for many people. There are, as I indicated with our earlier interviewee, the signs are not just aesthetic in nature, they're safety matter, because when people are driving, particularly at night, and trying to see where they're at, you don't know where you're going in the city. The existing signs, which were fine at the time they went in, obviously improvements have been made to safety, and I do think that it's a good use of public resource for public safety reasons to do that. There's also the navigational aspect. This is something that's probably, I won't say long overdue, but definitely necessary. And I think most residents would believe that it's a valid and legitimate expense to be made in this case. So I fully support it.
And Mr. Mayor, I'm glad that we have ADA compliant street signs finally. Thank you.
And just as a side note, we are making good use of the old signs. They're going to be given to the Huntington Woods Men's Club to put into the auction next year. So if you desire to buy your street sign, you'll have the opportunity at next year's auction. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2 is a matter of receiving and filing the OPEB Annual Evaluation Report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. Ethan, do you want to make any comments?
Yeah, so normally we don't receive and file these. These are, every year we're supposed to do either a interim disclosure or a full actuarial evaluation of our OPEB plans in order to comply with audit standards for the state of Michigan. But the city manager and myself just thought we would highlight this particular OPEB plan because our funded status for OPEB jumped from 44% to 65%. So we just wanted to highlight that and highlight the commission's ongoing commitment to fiscal solvency within the city. The entire report is attached in the packet. Most of it is thoroughly boring, but you can read it if you would like.
Okay. Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3 is a second reading with some changes to the first reading, amending Chapter 40, zoning, Article 10, mainly regarding fences in Huntington Woods. Hank, you want to take us through?
Sure. There was a couple things were corrected. There was a couple things added, a couple things were corrected from the last time based on commissioner concerns. Before you see adjusted copy for the second reading, the copy does contain the changes. There's also a revised permit application. There was concern raised by the commission that they wanted to make sure that people got notice when fences were going in, as people were no longer having to sign off on privacy fences. So we've amended the application, and we've added the applicant agrees to notify the affected neighbors by mail, posting, or certified mail of the intent to install new fencing prior to the date of install, and understands that the cost of removal of any existing fence, if desired by the affected neighbor, will be paid for by the applicant and completed at the time of installation. This will give notice to all fences that go in, which is beneficial to that because we didn't have that before. So while we're allowing the privacy fences on a by right situation, we're also making sure that everybody knows when a neighbor's fence is going in and they're not just surprised one day when a fence appears. So that was one of the concerns that the commission had on the last time. The other things that we had, there were concerns about the zoo and what we're adding for the American zoos and aquariums and that. I just want to go over that for a second. Typically, the city of Huntington Woods doesn't profess to be an expert in what it takes to keep a tiger in place. So the American Zoos and Aquariums has standards that are nationwide for all these animals and how best to contain them and how best to maintain the integrity and security of the zoo. So that's why those are in there, and that's why we're deferring to them on that, because they would know better as to how to keep our residents and the zoo goers safe during that. So that's why that's in there. And then, other than that, this is pretty much the same as it was the last time. There wasn't really any changes to that. We're talking about privacy fences and being allowed, and that's why we're taking away from the, we're taking away from the privacy fences. We're letting them be allowed, and what we're taking away is to having to have the neighbors sign off. And the reason for that is twofold. One, again, is that then you're forcing the neighbor to act as a de facto zoning board of appeals, which doesn't work, and City Attorney Rosati and I have had many conversations over the years about that, so we're being able to correct that at this point in time. And yet, with the notification factor, we're still letting people know when they're going in. The other thing is that by allowing them to ask that the neighbor take out an existing fence, so you don't have the two fences on the lot line. Some people don't care, so we could leave it, but the other people will. And this will allow them to have the person who is petitioning for the new fence take out the second fence at their expense, and it'll leave actually solve some problems rather than create them, and it'll keep us out of court. Other than that, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, as I'm sure City Attorney Rosati can as well.
Do we have a motion to adopt?
So move.
Second.
I'm confused about one thing yet, Hank.
Yes, sir.
Two fences on a lot line.
Yes, sir.
So if the existing chain link fence neighbor doesn't want to remove their chain link fence,
Then they don't have to.
so there will be two fences on a lot line?
Fences on a lot line. But the time for that to go away is, if they want their chain link fence, the privacy fence would be going up at the expense of the applicant. If they want to keep their chain link fence, they certainly can do that. But in doing so, they understand what the ramifications are, is that at the time of the installation of the new fence, that the neighbor who's applying for the new fence takes it out. If not, then they either live with it or they take it out. But the opportunity is there for it to cost them nothing to have the fence removed.
So the ordinance reads one fence per lot line, right? Am I reading that wrong?
If it is, it's, where are you?
I-2,
That's the title. And Carol and I actually have gone over this.
it's on page 4. Yep.
Yeah, it's page 4, I-2. And then, I think, Carol, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the title for the one fence on the lot line that describes what could happen.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's not saying
okay.
that there can only be one fence on the lot line, it's the title, and that in the event that the owner applies to install a new fence on the property line that contains the existing fence on the adjacent property, the owner seeking the installation of a new fence shall be required to remove the existing fence, subject to the approval of the adjacent property owner at the applicant's own cost to install a new fence on the property line. Carol and I actually went through this, and we had a discussion about that, whether or not we should just remove that line or not. So we decided that was kind of a header for it, just like vacant lots is the header and the one above it, and dogs runs are prohibited below that. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that's where we were at with that. And Carol, you didn't have any problem leaving that, correct?
No, I mean, if you'd like to change it, we
We
could
could
certainly do it. I mean, we could say,
As long as you're okay with it.
yeah.
I kind of defer to the person that has to defend it.
I mean, we
Correct.
could call it preference for one fence per lot line, if you'd prefer that.
That's certainly.
Well, so what it is, just so that I'm clear, as the mayor indicated, all right, so you've got a chain link fence on your side, and I'm on the other side, and I want to put up a privacy fence. I call you and say, or I send you the thing saying we're going to do this. You say, well, I like my chain link fence. So there becomes a two fence per lot line situation because one neighbor doesn't want to give up his or her fence. Is that right?
That's correct.
How does that make any sense at all?
Well,
It doesn't make sense, and that's what we're hoping, that people won't elect to go that way, but they have a right to do it.
What happens, we talked about this the last time. The business about what happens to that middle area if there's no access to clean it. In other words, you're gonna start to get weeds, you're gonna start to get debris. Now, granted, that may be on the side of the house, on the side of the home that said we didn't want to give up our chain link fence. Is the answer gonna be, well, that's their business to deal with because they didn't want to give up the chain link fence?
yes. It's one of those where, there's kind of a trade-off here, but people are still expected with their backyards to maintain their backyards. The opportunity is given to them at no cost to them to remove that fence. If they aesthetically feel that they like the look of the chain link fence against the backdrop of a privacy fence, then we're not saying that they can't keep it, but they're still expected to maintain it. If that would become a situation where it would become, for example, like the road raceway, which I can't imagine that anybody would let it get that way. But,
Well, no, but what happens is, and I'm well acquainted with this, is you get scrub trees start to grow in there. And guess what? Scrub trees become larger trees. When they become larger trees, the person that has the privacy fence is going to find that they've got a tree pushing their privacy fence over or going through the fence. I'm well acquainted with this scenario. I'm just asking, so I understand that you can't let perfect stand in the way of the good. And I'm not saying there isn't good in here. I'm just saying there are some, like I said, I get it. You're saying, look, what neighbor would say, oh, I want to keep a chain link fence if you're putting up a nice privacy fence, and the privacy fence has to be good on both sides, so there's no more of this, I get the good side on my side and you get the crummy side on yours, correct? That can't happen anymore.
It has to be good facing out.
Huh?
good faces out.
Right, and
Faces.
so as a result, you have good on both, because most people don't want to put up a privacy fence with the good side facing out, and not willingly anyway. I'm just, I've dealt with these issues myself on many occasions, and I see what happens here, but, like I said, there's good changes to the ordinance, and I understand that. Although I still have concerns about the elimination of the need to, and I want to ask about that, because let's say you give notice to the neighbor, and the neighbor says, I don't like it. What's the dispute remedy? What's the dispute resolution procedure for that?
There's none. I mean, if they're given the opportunity to have the new person take the fence out, if they don't want to, that's it.
No, but I know, but say they, and again,
Well, they
Carol?
don't have the right to dictate whether somebody can put
I
a
know,
fence
but
up.
Ms. Rosati, we've both been here a long time, and we've seen what neighbor versus neighbor can look like. And I know of a situation like this right now in Pleasant Ridge, where the neighbor who wanted the new fence, the old one's dilapidated, they want to take it down. The neighbor on the other side says, no, I like it. And he won't grant permission, and under the Pleasant Ridge ordinance, you have to have the consent of the neighbor.
Well,
So
to
the
be
people.
perfectly honest, asking for the consent of the neighbor is not legal, okay?
What do you mean it's not legal?
It's not legal,
Why?
because your neighbor doesn't have the right to dictate what you can do under the ordinance. You can run into a situation like you're describing, that the neighbors don't like each other, so that person will not be able to
Right.
do what everybody else can do in the city. Look at the law.
I
Just saying.
think it's a little, I mean.
We went through this with the zoning ordinance rewrite on
I know,
this
but
issue.
debating it, here is, all I'm saying is, you know, after living in the city for as long as I have, this has been something that you always did if you wanted to do. And like I said, in the years in our current location, we've never had an issue because we have pools on every side of us, which means that the neighbors with the pool have to have a 4-foot chain link fence going around it. So, you know, it's never been an issue for us, but, I mean, we've had this ordinance for years that required permission. I don't know that it's not lawful, but I understand it's a neighborly consideration, and you can argue that can't be mandated, but
Okay, you and I'll discuss this after the meeting.
I understand. Well, I think that that was one of my major concerns about this. And I think that, the notice requirement, if it doesn't satisfy it, it at least opens the opportunity to some sort of resolution, whether the neighbors came to the city manager or whatever, who may broker a resolution. But I'm not looking to create another level of appeal or an administrative issue. I'm just telling you, I can, in a casual conversation with neighbors, you're gonna find out people think it's a really good idea to ask your neighbor before you make a change to the fence, just based on things we do with all kinds of things, air conditioners, what do you call it, generators, anything like that, having the neighbors agree that you could put your generator there, you could put your air conditioning unit there, things like that. Like I said, as long as it goes smoothly, there's no problem. The question is, what happens when it doesn't? And you can bet your boots that there's gonna be a dozen somewhere in here. So, but like I said, I'm not trying to stop, I'm trying to have perfection stand in the way of the good. So there are good changes, and I'll support the ordinance. There you go.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for the staff. Hank, thank you for including that notification. I'm wondering, based on this conversation that I'm hearing tonight, it doesn't have to be in the ordinance, but along with the application, I'm wondering if there could be an FAQ attached to it, because hearing you describe it and have that scenario that Mayor Paul, asked about, I think it clarified a lot of things. And to Mr. Olsman's, concerns, that might be a way to, I guess, this could happen. Could we advise or have something out there that says, what happens if weeds grow in between the space? Who's responsible for that? Like, kind of put that information out there so that the decision makers on both sides of the property, understand what they're getting themselves into.
It would be no problem to include an FAQ with some of the scenarios that Commissioner Olsman raised. We've done it in the past with other applications. We certainly would have no problem doing that with this.
Okay, great.
As I said, you have no idea how fast scrub trees grow. You don't have to do anything. And man, these things, they grow, they get thick, and pretty soon, believe me, I'm well aware of certain rental properties, but this is a big issue. I've seen, as they say in the vernacular, I've seen this movie before. And it's like I said, it's not something you're not gonna see. It's something guaranteed you'll see. And I'm just, like Michelle said, we're trying to build in some, and I think that's I think her suggestion is, and your idea is good, put in some examples so people understand the what ifs. And that's all.
We would have no problem doing
But like I said, the best thing about it is it requires definitive notice. They have to get it. The neighbor has to get it. And if they don't, then the other neighbor doesn't qualify because they haven't done what they need to do. So, do I agree that most people are gonna say sure? Yeah. But I've been here a long time, and you can always see the one that it doesn't. Then what do we do? So, I'll support it.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to comment that wearing my parent hat, And being the parent of a child who is terrified of dogs, I'm very grateful that the ordinance will restrict invisible fences so that they're not allowed in the front lawn. I'm concerned, though, that that's kind of buried in the ordinance, that there's no mention of invisible fences until it gets down to restrictions and is under sort of, dog runs prohibited. It would be, I just worry that perhaps residents don't consider invisible fences to fall under, the same permit requirements that would apply to standard fences, and would it make sense to indicate in section A, the A paragraph, that it applies to fences or walls, including invisible fences?
I think that, and I appreciate that comment, but I think that we can do a couple things with this. And one is, as part of our FAQ, we can include some information in that as well.
Okay.
So that may help. Part again, as far as the invisible fences in the front yard, part of it is that by having the animal in the front yard, you're still having to walk. Amazon, postal carriers, everybody, children, whatever, are still having to pass the animal in order to get to the front door of the house. So were those concerns. And I'm appreciative of your concern for children in the neighborhood that may have a problem with an animal in the front yard or because they don't perceive it as being tethered, when in fact it may or may not. And there's plenty of situations where perhaps an invisible fence doesn't actually contain the animal. So having said that, we'd be happy to add something.
Yeah,
in our
that's very
FAQ.
easy to add. Well, it's
You
very
can do it
easy
if you want.
for me to add it in A. So I'll do that and I'll add it in the heading as well.
Okay, so if she does that, then that would be approved subject to the addition of that.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that.
Are existing invisible fence grandfathered in?
It would be.
We would have no way of knowing whether it's there.
You're only gonna
I
know.
thought the old ordinance did require there to be a sign, correct, in the front yard if there wasn't an invisible
Did the old
fence.
ordinance even allow them?
Why do I remember
They
that?
did, but the problem with it is that once the sign's gone, you don't know that it's there to know that it shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
can't, wait a minute. With respect to an issue like,
Yeah,
as Jessica, Commissioner Steinhardt pointed out, and again, this starts to tilt towards public safety
yeah.
or the safety of the public. So you got an invisible fence, you got it, and I've seen this, the dog comes right up to the edge of the property. In my line of work, I think about the ways people can get hurt, and, you're walking and along comes, and again, you can say it's an extreme hypothetical, but it's reality. Dog comes bounding up to the edge of the property line. You have no idea that there's a fence there. Why cannot we, if presuming, I understand Carol's point about it's grandfathered in, but why can't we mandate placement of a sign under this new ordinance, even if they didn't have a permit to put in because they didn't need it, or we didn't prohibit it, the invisible fence stuff? Why can't we, in the current ordinance, mandate that anybody who has it has to place a notification sign visibly on the property so people see it?
I think-
Again, it's part of the zoning ordinance, so anything that exists on the day this is adopted is a prior non-conforming use. We can't mandate them to change it. So we could add that they'll be required to put up a fence in this, but we can't go backwards.
No, and when things happen, it doesn't mean that somebody wasn't on duty watching what was going to happen, but now there's a realization of certain circumstances. I'm just putting something out there for consideration, that there, let me ask you this, do we know who has invisible fence?
No. Because
But
people-
now you will.
Now we will.
Now you will, because I mean,
Yeah.
it's now,
We didn't before, and part of the issue becomes is that there are some in the front yards, there are some that are not. But by doing so and not having them in the front yards, unless they're grandfathered and they have one that's put in there won't be animals in the front yard. And that's the benefit of having this out, because if an animal can't be behind a fence, it can't be in the front yard. And then also, as Carol alluded to, these will all become legal non-conforming, grandfathered in at the point in time which they have to be repaired or replaced. When you remove a non-conformity, the intent is that the non-conformity doesn't
Okay.
get replaced.
do we have Ms. Rosati, do we have the authority to mandate that if the property is sold and it has an invisible fence around the front yard, that it has to be removed?
No, because the nonconformity runs with the property.
Runs with the land, it's not, it doesn't run with the people, it runs with the land.
It runs with the dog, actually. I'm just kidding. Well, I just, like I said, these are things that you think about now that maybe you didn't think about before, but like I said, Commissioner Steinhardt's point is well taken here. And, all right, well, sometimes the law just gets in your way, doesn't it?
It does.
Society?
You know that.
I do.
So it would not be possible to require non-conforming invisible fences to have a sign indicating that there's an invisible fence present?
I mean, they were lawful when they were put in, and
Right.
if that wasn't a requirement, you can't impose an additional requirement on it. We can add, did we have anything about a sign?
You
Did
could,
it though,
could do a voluntary, program where say we
ask
came up
that
with
they
a,
do in the interest of neighbor, you know.
I mean, that could be something you put out on your website.
Right.
Like an e-blast saying,
I understand, but we furnish the sign. I mean, we would, look, I don't like the idea of any more signs anyway that we have to have, but I think the point is well taken. And I cannot imagine too many people that have one saying, well, that's a bad idea,
And-
given the concern.
yeah, I guess, and you
So make it a
would
policy.
really only need a sign if your invisible fence went into the front yard.
Right,
So maybe something out on the website and
I don't know how
encouraging
many-
people to,
yeah,
there may,
but
there may
there's,
not be that many.
let me ask you a question. As a
Yeah.
matter of policy, it's okay to do it, just not as a matter of ordinance. Is that
Correct.
right? Okay.
Yeah, you
So
can
we
encourage people to do,
So my suggestion is that we develop a policy that we try to identify those people that have it. I would imagine some of the people have an identification sign on it now, but I think the city should have something available that's not a big deal, it's cheap, and that you know, recommends why this should be used. It's a public safety concern, you know, and I mean, I think that the right to walk down the sidewalk safely and is important as the right to, I get the non-conforming use and all that, but now you have two competing public interests. So we can take it, I think we can handle it as a matter of policy, and eventually those, what's the lifespan of those invisible fences?
Yeah,
They-
they
they-
vary widely.
yeah, I've, having them in the past, they don't last. I mean, you'll get a break here or that, or this or that, and it's,
Well, you like raised pit bulls or something, you know?
yeah, I'm gonna bring them over to visit you. No, they don't last very long. They constantly need work.
Could we include this in the FAQs? Because I think,
That'd be great, too.
yeah, it could get kind of confusing if there's a note in the ordinance about invisible fences and then somebody sees that there's an invisible fence with a sign, right? I think a simple
I mean, you may have
explanation.
people that just call you and say, this person has it in the front. Can you go knock on their door and give them a
Right.
sign?
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, with a little public information,
Right.
so.
Plus, we still, with respect to the contractors, they have to have a license from the city, right, to install and work here?
Mhm.
All right, so when they do, they get the updated ordinance and stuff like that. We give it to them, it should go to them. And, but you know how these things are when they're put in, you know, if nobody's watching, all of a sudden, you know, boom.
And again, if they don't have a permit or they don't hold a permit for it, that's why, like, when he asked how many of these are in the front yard right now, we
Right.
have no way of knowing because most of them didn't have permits for it.
Because honestly, it wasn't until much later that I realized that communities considered these to be fences. Because my thought always was probably like the person on the street, you don't see anything, so what's it matter, right?
Well, it only
It
matters
doesn't-
under the circumstance that,
Right, but you know what I'm saying, you wouldn't think I have to get approval for this because it's going underground and
Right.
nobody sees it.
but
So-
it's this, you could argue it's rare and so forth, but it's not rare to the person who is suddenly confronted
Oh,
by.
I get it,
and
but
get-
I think
and
that's
gets
an
it.
education for people
know.
to realize, just because you can't see it, it's still a fence.
And
All right.
the non-conforming section G, it says fences and walls already erected as of the date the ordinance may be maintained at their current height. So it doesn't specify that if it's an invisible fence, it would be maintained at its current distance around the perimeter of the home. So.
Well, I can add and location,
Yeah, so, I mean,
but
I'd
it's.
love it if they only had
yeah.
to be maintained at their current height. But I just don't know, like, again, trying to make sure that that the language in the ordinance is applicable to the invisible fence as it would be to a visible fence.
Okay, got it.
So we discussed two changes to your motion. Are you acceptable to those?
Yes.
I'll tell you what I've got. I'm going to make for our discussions tonight. 1, 2, 3 changes.
3?
Yeah, I'm gonna make 3 changes.
Okay. You want to tell us what the 3 are, just so we're all clear?
Okay, one is the beginning to, make clear that it includes invisible fences as well, so that'll go in both the heading and section 401010A. The next would be the non-conforming, to include the end location to cover the invisible fences. And the next one I'm gonna make is on the one fence per lot line. I'm going to retitle it either preference for one fence per lot line or something of that nature. So it's very clear, this is what we prefer you do. Okay?
Do I
Is that
have-
acceptable?
Yes, do I have to withdraw my original
No,
motion? Okay.
just have to accept those.
I accept those changes that Mrs. Rosati just outlined.
Same, I accept those changes.
And
Okay.
the
FAQs.
example portion
FAQs.
of the,
Yeah, I thought the FAQ was a policy.
Yeah, that's-
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
all right, yeah, that'll handle it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't
Okay.
have to be in
All right.
doesn't have to be in this.
this motion.
All right.
Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 is a matter of appointing Angela Walensky to the Senior Advisory Committee. I'm not sure the length of the term that is left. No, okay. For the remaining amount of term. Is there a motion?
Duration thereof. Make
there a
it very
motion?
official.
So
Okay.
move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So our city manager is not with us this evening, but Ethan did have one comment that he wanted to make under.
Chris wanted me to share with you guys that, or with the commission rather, that there's the charger, the public charger will be operational at the end of next week. So you go up to it and there's a QR code that you can scan, and pay for the charge. Fun fact I did not know, if you leave your car in there overnight, the company will automatically charge $10 to the payment. So you when you go to charge, you pay, you have your card on there, and then if you decide to leave your car in the charger for way past, the time it takes to charge, there's an additional fee. So residents can be mindful to not leave their car.
That's what I was thinking.
That's pretty good.
Should be like $100.
But just a
bucks,
reminder
you know?
for residents to not leave their cars in there overnight so other people can use them. That's it.
All right, thank you. Commissioner comments?
Mr. Mayor, I want to, Ethan is our de facto city manager here tonight.
Emphasis on de facto, but yes.
Younger and quite dapper than our, anyway, but we do wish Chris, well, I guess he's under the weather here, but he'll be all right. But I want to address the comments made by Ms. Downey earlier. I would appreciate it if you would speak to, if it's Rocco or Ivan Katz, whoever is responsible for is doing the lawn mowing at the parks and the cleanup, if we could get a crew over there this week, if there is garbage and debris everywhere, get it cleaned up, and if the grass is tall, the park should be mowed. Let's at least, I'd rather solve the problem for the moment here. As Ms. Downey knows, we're looking at long-range issues as well, but for right now, I don't think that any public park in the city should have that stuff in it that she demonstrated in the photos. I'd be the first one to say I don't go over there to go through it and find out, but there's no justification for that. So I would ask if you could tell whoever it is that's responsible to get a crew over there this week to do that.
On behalf of the city manager and the city commission, I will email them in the morning, put you guys on it.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Commissioner Steinhardt?
No comments.
Commissioner Elder?
I want to, heading into this early voting season and getting, ready, I just want to wish you luck, Heidi, and to the rest of the staff, and to thank the community of volunteers that always show up, and with early voting and all of absentee voting, I know you guys have already been working around the clock already, so I just wanted to express my appreciation to the team and to the greater public. Get out to vote.
All right, thank you. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.